As much as I try to stay neutral in my videos, it's difficult when a topic hits so close to home. My experience with small pickups has for the most part been positive, and today, now that, the smallest, most affordable trucks available in the West are, around $30,000+, and usually they're more than that, and they're bigger than the biggest trucks of old, I get a bit nostalgic when I see a Ford Ranger or an S10 or even a Dodge Dakota from my era. For you, maybe it's an old F-Series from the 60s or 70s, or maybe, a little Datsun. Regardless, there's no denying that the truck landscape here in America has undergone a massive shift in the past 20 years. But why has this happened, and is there hope for small pickups going forward? Now, this is not the first time the general truck market has changed. In the early days of motoring, trucks were used primarily for commercial purposes, and they were little more than, motorized wagons. But the Model T pickup really helped to popularize the use of trucks among the general public. People started seeing their use for just regular people, but it wasn't really until after World War II and with a surge in demand that manufacturers began to really diversify and really look into what it would take to make sort of the ultimate truck for regular people. And so trucks became more powerful, they had upgraded and new types of suspension and frame design, and perhaps most importantly, trucks started to become cool. We also saw the rise of the early SUVs, which were often built on truck platforms, which certainly influenced truck development going forward, as the two segments of trucks and SUVs would kind of both become luxury vehicles down the road. It's important to understand, though, that trucks were getting bigger and beefier at this time so that they could withstand the abuse that their owners would put them through, and trucks became more specialized through the 70s and 80s with lots of different options for prospective buyers, and around this time we began to see the rise of a new kind of truck. In the 1960s and 70s, Japanese automakers like Toyota and Datsun, which is now Nissan, entered the American market with compact pickup trucks, in part as a response to the gas crisis of 1973. These vehicles, such as the Toyota Hilux and Datsun 620, were smaller, more fuel efficient, and often more affordable than their American counterparts. And their success really forced American automakers to respond by developing their own small pickups. And so companies like Ford and Chevy and Dodge responded to the competition from foreign manufacturers by introducing their own compact pickup trucks. Ford introduced the Ford Courier, which was actually a rebadged Mazda pickup, and that was in the early 70s, while Chevy introduced the Chevy LUV based on the Isuzu Faster. And that was all kind of happening around the same time. Over the years, small pickup trucks underwent continuous innovation with improvements in design and performance and features. Manufacturers introduced various cab and bed configurations and engine options and comfort amenities to appeal to a wide range of consumers, and small pickup trucks really gained popularity among consumers who valued their affordability and fuel efficiency and practicality, as again, the high-end pickups just kind of became more high-end. They were particularly well suited for urban and suburban environments where larger trucks were less practical. Additionally, small pickups appealed to outdoor enthusiasts and DIY enthusiasts, people who needed a vehicle capable of transporting, smaller equipment and materials. And this new market brought about many of the iconic American small trucks that many of us know and love, and that really did reign supreme, at least through my early childhood. Trucks like the S10 and Ranger and Dakota. The 90s and into the early 2000s were, in my opinion, really the glory years for these small trucks. From the beginning in California in the 1970s, and still at really the end of their run, small trucks were their own kind of cool, and that's because trucks themselves have always been cool. They're so much more than just practical vehicles. They're kind of a status symbol. Small pickups just made it so that more people could enjoy the truck life. Not to mention the long-standing custom scenes surrounding these vehicles. My own first and fourth vehicles were both 1998 Chevy S10s, powered by manual, gutless 4-cylinders, and one time I had a friend ask me if he could use my S10 to haul some gravel, and if I remember right, the bed was almost hitting the tires at like 400 pounds. It was a great time to be alive. There were V6 and even V8 options. Small trucks were cool, and then it all came crashing down rather suddenly. First, the entire truck landscape began to change. By the 2000s, trucks really came in all shapes and sizes, from tiny to gargantuan, economical and affordable to luxury and not affordable. But the luxury pickup really began to take over. Consumers began to view the truck as something very different than ever before. A vehicle that, yes, was utilitarian in nature, but could also be used as a personal vehicle. I remember my boss a while back, a guy who drove an F-150, a vehicle that got very little use as a truck, and he explained why he liked to drive a truck. He said that trucks are built to withstand more, but if you just use it for regular use, it'll just last that much longer than, say, the average sedan, for example. And I'm not totally sure that that makes all that much sense, but, I think that kind of thinking is at play for many people. Manufacturers recognized this trend, and they started offering, higher trim levels, and the truck just became more comfortable. And as the luxury market moved beyond just sedans to SUVs and trucks, more advanced infotainment setups became common, and it wasn't too long before a whole slew of truck drivers were just never using their trucks as trucks. They were just basically luxury cars or family vehicles. Coupled with this, increasing safety standards began to make the production of small vehicles in general quite difficult, but manufacturers figured out how to make it work. They made it work for cars, and if something like a Miata or a Honda Fit can be sold here in the States, the question is, why couldn't a modern equivalent of, say, a Chevy S10 be available today? We'll talk more about that later, but honestly, safety standards are not really the main culprit for the death of the small pickup. It's actually something you wouldn't suspect. Okay, maybe you would. It's the EPA. Now, I have to give a massive shout out to the channel All Cars with John for really simply laying this out. I'll link his video on this topic in the description below. He lays out exactly why the EPA has all but killed the small pickup and all but killed fun in general, if we're being honest. John explains that the EPA has updated their fuel economy standards over the years, and in very drastic ways at certain points, to make the most economical car really just the bigger car. I'm not kidding, that's pretty much all it is. Instead of saying, hey, we need to limit these gigantic and often dangerous gas-guzzling vehicles and have more, 35, 45 mile per gallon sedans, they've just made it more difficult to even produce these small cars because the standard is so much higher for them. So here's the graph that John references. So as the car's overall footprint goes up, the standard is lower for miles per gallon. And on the one hand, I get that. It does kind of make some sense. I don't think we should require a massive Escalade to get the same miles per gallon as a small sedan, but these standards make it incredibly difficult to even get these small sedans past emission regulations without penalty or without making them, electric or hybrid. And this is why the Ford Maverick or Hyundai Santa Cruz, for example, these are small trucks that aren't actually that small in comparison to an old Ranger or S10, or especially an old Datsun. This is why the Maverick is powered by either this dinky little 2-liter 4 or, a hybrid. It has to be that way. They can't put a bigger traditional ICE engine in it because it wouldn't pass the standards, and they also can't make it too small. Even if they made a smaller version of it and just left that 2.0 in it, it wouldn't pass the EPA regulations. How silly is that? And this is why the loads of cool small trucks that are sold everywhere else in the world that are super economical, they really just can't sell them in the US with our current regulation system that heavily favors just gigantic, dangerous vehicles. Meanwhile, no other country will allow the death machine that is the Tesla Cybertruck to be sold, but it's fine here. And all of this fits perfectly with the business model of American manufacturers. It's like they're kind of all in cahoots. It's made it so that companies like Ford and GM can finally do what they've always wanted, which is not compete with foreign automakers and just make gigantic, ridiculous, not economical trucks and SUVs. But it's all in the name of the environment, right? And it is all connected, and the truth is, bigger vehicles can be sold at a premium, and we as consumers just have to accept the fact that our country just can't produce affordable practical vehicles for, its own domestic market anymore. And, corporate greed wins again. Just go buy your $70,000 vehicle. Just suck it up. Get the loan. It's sad, but really the only possible future for small trucks here in the States would probably be electric. I just don't see how else it could happen. There are massive incentives to make electric vehicles for manufacturers, and there wouldn't be any of this EPA crap to deal with. Of course, passing the safety requirements would be another hurdle to jump through, but it's totally possible and entirely uninteresting, if you ask me. Which means the good old days of cool, unique, interesting, customizable small pickups are just that. The good old days, and they are probably never going to return. But let me make a case for the small truck. For all of you budding car enthusiasts out there who are itching to raise $500 million to start your own manufacturing company, first, just look at the enthusiasm around the Maverick. Look at how pumped people were when it was first unveiled. I know people who were on waiting lists to get them. And I will give Ford credit. It is an innovative little truck. Unibody construction, it's a smaller package. It's really affordable in a market where you can't even get a decent F-150 for under 30 grand. That's why the Maverick has done so well. It was really genius. Oh, and it looks like a Chevy, which is nice. But it still doesn't hold a candle to the style and character and fun of, the small trucks of old. The early Tacomas and Ford Rangers, these were simple, dead reliable, fun, affordable, practical, and useful, classically styled trucks. And they were truly compact. I mean, if you see a Gen 1 Tacoma or even a Gen 1 Tundra and you compare it to new examples, it's just mind-blowing how much bigger our trucks are. But I have a genius plan, and if any major manufacturer out there would go in on this, I do think it would need to be one of the big American ones. But here's my plan. Take what Mazda did with the Miata and do it for the small pickup. Mazda took a type of vehicle that had all but died. Convertibles, and especially small roadster type convertibles, were completely gone at this point. And they just flipped the script on it, and people, it turns out, were starved for those kinds of vehicles. We need the same thing for the small pickup, which is no easy feat. It would involve lots of R&D, but give us a classically styled, characterful, all-new, small, affordable truck. If Ford did it, they'd hopefully make it look like a mid-90s Ranger or something, or if Chevy did it, make it look like the S10. But give it, a little economical four-banger like the Miata. Give it a manual. We don't need a bunch of features. Just make it a dead simple, give us the most boring interior ever. There's zero need for, decent towing capability. That's just not what these old small trucks were about. And figure out how to get it past all the regulations, or don't and just take the penalty, because I'm telling you, that truck priced at, say, 18 grand would absolutely blow up the car market. People would lose their ever-living minds if GM or Ford did something like this. I guarantee you it would create a complete cult following, just like the Miata, and it would have its own entire customization scene. We've seen this time and time again. When companies go in on these small affordable vehicles, they become complete legendary cult classic following vehicles right away. It's not just the Miata. Think about something like the Honda Grom. Now, I doubt this will ever happen, so be thankful you live close to the heyday of small trucks and that they're still readily available and somewhat affordable, because I don't see this happening anytime soon, but I do want to see it happen. Now, if you've had any experience with great small trucks through history, whether recent or not so recent, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Honestly, the comment section is probably my greatest contribution to automotive content, as so many of you guys are older and have way more experience than I. So let us know what you think down below, and we'll see